Hi everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about chaos in the human body and what the point of our biology is. Chaos is something that separates living things from physical, non-living, non-regenerating matter. And it all comes down to entropy. So entropy and chaos are essentially the same thing. And when we talk about entropy, we're basically talking about the breakdown of systems. So we're turning order into chaos. And the less order that we have, the more chaos, the less information that we have, the less structure that we have, the more difficult it's going to be for us to properly maintain ourselves and to keep all of our own systems in order and to support life. And so the key in biology is making sure that our entropy levels, our chaos, are as low as possible. And so there can be inputs to our biology that are causing all this chaos and all this inflammation, all this lack of proper structured information. But we take that chaos and we are supposed to refine it into high quality data, into patterns. And this is what makes our biology work efficiently, and this is what prevents aging, and this is what prevents diseases. And when this breaks down, and when we can't process data anymore from our environment, when we can't process information coming to us from the light, from the food, when things become more artificial and they're not structured in the way that is expected from nature, that's when chaos starts to take over and our cells don't know what to do with it, and we don't know how to manage this entropy properly. And so as we are unable to manage it, our entropy rises in our cells. And so the less efficient our cells are at managing entropy, the more disease and the more problems we're going to see. And most importantly, the more quickly you will age. And this works the same way as any other modern thing that you think of that runs on reversing entropy. You think of your fridge and your house. Your fridge is essentially reversing entropy by pumping out the heat, and so it creates a cold environment inside, but it uses energy in order to reverse that and in order to pump the heat out. And so outside of the fridge, the entropy actually increases, because outside of the fridge, you're introducing more chaos by adding the heat, and you're taking energy in order to push that heat out of the fridge. But the fridge, inside the fridge, you're creating a lower entropy system, a more organized system, because you have much colder environment. You're stabilizing it to an exact temperature. That's a little oversimplification of how our body works. We have mitochondria in our cells, and these mitochondria, the purpose of them is to take information and to take chaos and to assimilate all of this and produce an output that our body can handle and use properly. And so when we give it little bits of entropy at a time, it can train it and help it get better, such as cold exposure, heat exposure, small amounts of toxins. But when we are overloading it with entropy all the time, when we're overloading it with chaos and modern signals like EMF and artificial light, toxins from food, even negative emotions, negative intentions, we destroy the ability for our cells to properly maintain their low entropy state. And So instead of being negative entropy machines, which are always like the refrigerator, keeping a perfect environment inside, which is reducing aging, our mitochondria start breaking down. They maybe have 90% efficiency at negative entropy, or reversing chaos. Maybe they have 80%, maybe they have 50%. And as we age, this gets lower as well, which is why we see diseases increasing as age increases. But the key is that you really want to be doing everything you can to support the negative entropy processes of your cells, and this comes down to quite a few different factors, but essentially your body's negative entropy systems run most effectively when your mitochondria are working properly. So your mitochondria are essentially negative entropy machines, almost like a refrigerator. Your mitochondria work alongside many other systems in the body in order to do this. Most importantly, the water networks in your body. And the reason the mitochondria are important for this, and you might have heard of mitochondria before as the powerhouse of your cells. Mitochondria, they have to be always using processes that are not within the classical physics system. So the mitochondria, since all the particles are so small, they operate on a quantum mechanics scale of physics. And this is really important because what quantum mechanics allows for is there's a little bit of magic happening here that biology has taken advantage of, which is really fascinating. Essentially, your mitochondria, by utilizing quantum mechanics, they get to take advantage of a few different properties, including the idea of probabilities. So in this quantum mechanics physics system, there's not specific things happening in order. There's a bunch of possibilities of things that can happen, and you're not really picking one of them or another. You have a lot of different chances of different things happening. And this is great because the way that our body works, we are able to choose the most optimal path if we have as many possible probabilities in this quantum mechanics space. And the simplest way to put it is that we want to maximize the probabilities of this quantum mechanical space, which means we want to keep everything running in a quantum mechanics fashion instead of causing it to happen in a normal physics fashion that happens in an orderly process, and there's maybe one or two things that will happen based on a certain input or output that's probable, but we don't want to just have a couple of options. We want to have a lot of different ways to handle something. And so the most obvious example of this is how chlorophyll in plants works. So in order for plants to make energy, they take in sunlight. They have photons that react with the chlorophyll, and they release electrons. And these electrons, these small subatomic particles that operate on quantum mechanics principles, the electrons must make it all the way through a very complex maze to this reaction center in order for it to be able to produce energy, to create glucose from the sunlight. And there's a ton of different ways for it to go, like I said, to this reaction center, and there's a very, very small chance that it would make it. So the efficiency, so maybe a 1 in 100 chance, and so the efficiency of generating energy from sunlight through photosynthesis theoretically should be very, very low, but it actually ends up being quite efficient. I think it's close to 98% efficient, and it's really fascinating because there's so many different ways that this electron can travel through to the reaction center during photosynthesis. And what we've actually found out is that plants use quantum mechanics just like our cells in humans. for these processes that I'm talking about. So they basically have a probability spectrum, all these different paths that the electron can take to the reaction center. And when it has all these probabilities and ways that it can go, it actually, due to the way that quantum mechanics works, takes every pathway at once. And then once it makes it to the correct destination, to the reaction center, that ends the quantum mechanical processes, because a collision happens, because an action, it's almost like an action of consciousness, a measurement, as they would call it in quantum mechanics, is taken. And so the electron makes it through one of these many different probabilities. It actually takes all of them at once. It makes it to the reaction center, but when that happens, that is the only path that it actually ended up taking. So instead of only having like one chance each time an electron is set free by a photon of light to make it to the reaction center, it actually, and so maybe 1 in 100 times it would do it and it would have a 1% efficiency, it actually is able to take all the paths at once through all the probabilities, and then it ends up making it to the final destination. And so you have this extremely efficient system, but it's only efficient because quantum mechanical properties are working properly. And this is exactly how we want to think of the cells in our body and how our mitochondria are functioning. Our mitochondria are basically sensors of our environment, and they're in every cell in your body, and they work very similarly to this quantum mechanical process of chlorophyll in plants. And essentially, we need to make sure that they are running as smoothly as possible as these negative entropy machines, and they have as many quantum possibilities available to them, so that they can create they can pick from all the probabilities the best possibility to choose. If you have all these different ways of going about finding the best possibility, then you can more easily, it's just like if you have many more choices of what you want to do in a day, you can more easily make the right choice instead of if you only have 1 or 2 choices. And I'll expand on this in later videos, but there's a lot of factors that go into this, but the most important thing for increasing the efficiency of this system and keeping the quantum mechanical properties happening actually all comes down to water and down to light. So light is in everything. Everything is technically made of light. And I know this sounds very abstract, very woo, but it's true. Everything is made up of energy, because in Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times light squared. That's what that means. And so this basically is called mass equivalence, mass energy equivalence. And this means that both light, energy and light, and mass are the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. So what you're looking to achieve is an understanding that we are made of mass, but mass is also made of energy, and energy is essentially within the same boundaries as light, because energy all works within the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetism basically has everything to do with electricity, with charges. It's basically how charges move around, and charges are just energy moving. Magnetism, everything that is involved with electromagnetism, it all has to do with the flow of energy. And photons, which are a unit of light, they are essentially taking these two elements, electricity and magnetism. So electric field and a magnetic field, those are the two main components of electromagnetism. They actually are both combined in light. And so light is the force carrier of the electromagnetic force. And I know this is starting to get pretty deep, but it's not too complex. You don't have to memorize all of these things, but in order to understand what's happening, you need to know that everything in the body is working through electromagnetism. All of the chemical bonds that exist, they're all covalent or ionic bonds. They are all bonds electromagnetically. So chemistry is not just based on its own principles, it's based on physics. And the core of that is electromagnetism. And so when you start to understand that everything is really based on physics, and there's not like biology in its own realm and chemistry in its own realm and physics in its own realm, it's actually biology, which is based largely on chemistry, which is also based largely on physics, and in particular quantum mechanics. Because of the size of the particles, you start to realize that we don't need to be really studying these other things in isolation. We need to be studying physics, in particular quantum mechanics, and working our way up. So in order to take these concepts into a more functional area, we have to understand that because everything is happening electromagnetically, we need to have a place to store this electromagnetism. And for these reactions to happen, they don't just happen in empty space. Inside our bodies, they need a carrier, they need a way to organize it, to store it, to hold it. And this is water in the body. Water in the human body is really incredible. And water has a lot of really incredible properties. In particular, water is essentially, it's a liquid crystal when it's down at the scale of our biology. So if you've ever heard of an LCD display or an LCD TV, it's the same kind of structure. It's a liquid crystal display. LCD is what that stands for. And a liquid crystal means that it's just like a normal crystal where there's repeating patterns in the molecular structure, but instead of being rigid like a quartz crystal or a solid rock, it's liquid and it can move around. But these shapes are still interacting with each other, and there's still this order to it. And the way that water works in the human body with this allows quantum mechanical properties to exist within the water itself, and it allows the water to maintain quantum mechanical properties as long as the water is not disturbed. And so the most important thing, as we discussed, is to maintain these quantum mechanical properties to allow as many probabilities as possible so that your cells in your body can choose the most optimal outcome. The most difficult thing to understand here is that your body is essentially a reservoir for light and energy through electromagnetism. And because all of this is quantum mechanical, we need to keep, it can be probabilistic, which means it only has a few paths that are based on inputs. It doesn't have all these probabilities, or it can be deterministic. But you don't need to have all these probabilities all the time. You you just need these probabilities to happen in order to create this specific outcome. So we want the probabilities, and then we want to choose the right path, and then we want it to take a measurement and turn into a actual chosen direction. Just like the plant with the electron making it to the reaction center. And the more we can support the body's ability to maintain the quantum mechanical systems, the more we can have the most optimal probability chosen as an outcome, which allows us to very efficiently with life keep life alive, to keep life efficient, to not wear down. And the biggest thing that disrupts these water networks is man-made electromagnetic fields. And the biggest thing that supports them is natural electromagnetic fields. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because we start to look at different parts of the electromagnetic field. Electromagnetism is basically anything, it's all light. So we're talking about light right now with how these water networks are affected and how quantum mechanical properties are maintained. And the most important thing is understanding that things that don't exist in nature, our bodies are not able to understand properly. We didn't evolve with it. We are not used to processing it. So there's no mechanism to actually process it. And so when it comes to man-made electromagnetic radiation, which is, again, we're not overcomplicating this. We're not making it into this magical thing. Like, this is a real concept. Man-made electromagnetic fields are Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, cell towers, radio towers. All of that is light. And you may not want to believe that. You may not understand. You can look it up. You can ask ChatGPT. Radio waves are light. Wi-Fi is light. Bluetooth is light. All of this is light that we cannot see. It's all underneath the frequency level of what our visual photoreceptors can see. And so just like sunlight, just like all the colors we can see, all of these radio waves and other man-made variants of light are truly light. They are just at a lower frequency. They're below infrared. We can't see infrared light, which is what produces heat. It's what the sun, how the sun transfers heat to us. That's why we feel heat in the sun. It's because of infrared light, and we can't see it, and it makes up half of the light coming from the sun. And the light that reaches us is critical because it's all interacting with the water networks of our body. Water is particularly absorbent of a very large range of electromagnetic frequencies, both human-made and coincidentally and natural. And so the biggest ones that it absorbs are UV light from the sun, ultraviolet, infrared light from the sun as well, from other sources, which is the heat component we can't see. So we can't see both of those, and they're absorbed by water, the water networks in our body. And then also, unfortunately, microwave radiation. So I didn't explain it yet, but microwaves are the name for the frequency range that Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cellular all operate in. So yes, they are the same as a microwave oven. A microwave oven produces just a higher power version of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth frequencies. And the frequencies are a little different in terms of how they're modulated, but So some of this information might come as a huge surprise to you, and maybe you aren't open to receiving it yet. Maybe you need to do some more of your own research, and that's great. You can use any sources you'd like to that are valid. If you have questions about how to find valid sources, you can read my book, The Sunlight Cure, or you can send me a message and I can help you sort things out. But these microwave frequencies that are in basically all electromagnetic fields that are man-made, just like the food in the microwave, when you microwave it, the water heats up, the food heats up because they vibrate the water molecules. So microwave radiation, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, microwave ovens, cellular radios, they all vibrate water. This is really important because when you disrupt quantum mechanical systems, this is what causes them to choose an outcome. So instead of being probabilistic, they become deterministic. And when you take a measurement like this, as we discussed previously, you are eliminating possibilities and you're only creating a few outcomes. So it's really important to understand that while a lot of microwave radiation passes through your body, that's why we use it for communication, because it can pass through objects, not all of it passes through your body. A small percentage of it is interacting with the water molecules and other components of your body and cells. And you have to be really careful how close you are and for how long you are exposed to these different microwave man-made light sources, because the more powerful it is, the higher percentage of it is going to interact with the water networks of your body and other things that we haven't discussed yet, and it will begin to disrupt these systems. So essentially you're getting all this water that's, the stronger the source is, if you're right next to your phone, if you're right next to the Wi-Fi router, you're living close to a cell tower, you're on your computer all the time and it's only a foot or two away from you, they're disrupting these water networks. They're limiting the probabilities and the optimal possibilities that your cells can choose in order to reach the best outcome. And so that all equates to a higher level of entropy or chaos within the cells. And it's just like if a refrigerator can't work as well, it's going to pump out less heat, it's going to fight the entropy less well, it's not going to be as cold, your food's going to go bad. It's the same thing except much more complex in all of your cells and your mitochondria. So the best way that you can fight this is obviously to stay away from microwave radiation and man-made electromagnetic fields. But you can also really help everything by being outside during the day. Half of the light right now out here is infrared light. Infrared light, as we discussed, reacts with water as well. So it is absorbed by the water networks in our body. Our water networks are chromophore for infrared light, which means that they absorb it. And because we have all this infrared light being absorbed by the water, and it's natural and it's meant to do that, and we have evolved with that, and we can take advantage of that because our body it knows what to do with it, and it's so plentiful and it's available during all times of the day. We need to take advantage of it in order to optimize how our biology works. And the most important way that this works is the infrared light expands the area of these water networks throughout our body, and these are called exclusion zone networks. This exclusion zone is what allows all transfer of electrons throughout our body. And You might want to take this video in like sections and just rewatch it, because there's a lot of information, and this is kind of just like a summary of like a lot of the concepts that I'm going into on my channel. But essentially, we want to expand these water networks because they allow more electrons to flow through the body. The more electrons that we have in the body and flowing through the body and being held in the body, which also is a consequence of how expanded these water networks are, the more healthy we will be, the more optimally everything will function, and most importantly, the more optimally we can fight entropy, and the more efficiently our cells will run. And this also means that we will not age as quickly, we will not get diseases as quickly, we will feel better, we will feel more vital, we will be happier, we will have better mental health. Everything is optimized. So electrons are the most important thing in the human body. And so in order for the electrons to move properly, to choose the correct paths, to jump between different stages inside of our mitochondria in order to fight entropy the most efficiently, we need to have these optimally functioning water networks. So that means we can use the infrared light, which helps expand them to fight the man-made electromagnetic fields, the man-made light, microwave radiation. You can get farther away from microwave radiation. It drastically reduces the farther away you are, so distance is a very powerful tool. And so if everything really comes down to electrons in the body, what does this mean? Why is this random, particle, negatively charged particle, the most important thing in our body? Electrons happen to be the most basic form of an antioxidant. Antioxidants are something that reduces the charge of something. An electron is negative, so it reduces a charge from positive to more negative. The more negative everything is in your body, the more negatively charged, the more optimally it will function, because first of all, it lowers your pH level, which means your pH actually goes to be more basic instead of more acidic. So high pH means pressure of hydrogen. High pH means more acidity. And hydrogen is a single molecule. It's a proton. A proton is just basically the opposite of electron. It is positively charged. And so pressure of hydrogen or proton, same thing, means pressure of positive charge. And so if you have more pressure of positive charge, that's more acidic, and you want to neutralize that. You want to have a lower pH, and you want to do that naturally. You want to have the body do that on its own. You don't want to force anything. You can't do it really with food. Your body manages it very well with food. It's not about food. It doesn't matter what you drink. Your stomach acid is highly acidic. There's a lot of complexity and nuance to this. You're drinking water that is not acidic barely affects the pH as your body digests it, because of your stomach acid acidity. You want to be more focused on the quantum mechanical systems and the cellular systems, which are more specific to your environment and how you are affecting these water networks and how you're getting electrons from your environment. So it's all about, life is a game of getting as many electrons as possible. And so I hope this video sheds some more light on how our body works and what the point of everything is. Really, the whole point of having all of these electrons in the body is so that the body can communicate everything properly your cells run 100,000 processes per second. How could they possibly manage all those processes efficiently with anything that we typically associate with it, like enzymatic reactions, chemical signaling? There's too much complexity, there's too many things going on. We have to manage it with something that works faster, and that is electromagnetism, because it controls everything else. It happens at the speed of light. And so in order to manage all these processes efficiently, you have to have all the water networks working properly. You have to have as many electrons as possible, and these electrons allow for communication by interacting with proteins in the body. Now, proteins are not what you probably typically think of them as. Every protein in the human body we're not talking about the protein that you eat as a macro, that you have in like meat or beans or something like that. It is the same thing, but proteins have a different purpose. On a singular protein level, on a molecular level, proteins are like little keys. Your DNA's only purpose is to produce proteins. So what do we do with these proteins? And they have to be really important if everything that our DNA does is producing all these specific proteins. Proteins act as signals, they act as keys that unlock different mechanisms and different processes in the cell and the body. And so you want to have these proteins working properly. But what is the point of these proteins still? Like, how are they working? Well, if we want to get more complex, proteins can fold into hundreds of different shapes, each one. So your genetic expression just makes a protein. The real thing that affects how these proteins are used, and therefore how your whole entire body functions and interprets your DNA, is what happens to this protein after it's made. And so your body is filled with proteins. Collagen is the most abundant protein. They fold into hundreds of different shapes, and this folding depends on your environment. It depends on electromagnetism, it depends on temperature, it depends on charges. So you can have protons and electrons that unfold or fold these proteins into all these different shapes, and that determines their function, and that determines how your body's going to run. And so your DNA is not your fate, it's your environment that's causing everything to happen. And these proteins work because, really incredibly, proteins they're communicators between electrons and light. So let me clarify this, because that also probably sounds very complex, and this is a lot of information, so really you might have to just repeat some of the stuff in order to get it. I'm trying to go slow with it, but all these electrons are really important in the body because they act as antioxidants, like I said, but they also create electric currents as they move. And these electric currents move through proteins and release light. So proteins are almost like little light receivers and transmitters, and they can work the opposite direction. So a protein can absorb light, like melanin. Melanin on the skin, like when you have a dark tan, its purpose is to absorb light. That's why it's dark. There's not much light reflecting out of it. It's getting absorbed. And when it absorbs that light, it releases an electron from the protein, the melanin protein, and that flows through the body. So proteins can absorb light like that and move electrons. And then they work the other way as well. So moving electrons can cause proteins to release light. And you can see now this facilitates a communication system. Proteins can release small amounts of light, and as we know, also, you can look this up, you can read this in biology textbooks, in chemistry textbooks, light is a catalyst for chemical reactions. That's really important. Light is a catalyst. Light causes and affects chemical reactions. We just talked about recently, 10 minutes ago, how chemical reactions, there's 100,000 of them happening per second in the cell. What could be controlling them? It has to be something that can move quickly. Ideally, something that moves close to the speed of light would be really nice. And so our body is using proteins to release light through the flow of electrons, and also receive light, and there's very complex systems happening here. And this all equates to controlling all these processes and controlling all these signals in the human body. And this is also how healing works. So in order to heal the human body, you need an electric current. And so the more electrons you have, almost like a river with more water, there's more flow because there's more of them moving along. There's more pressure of these electrons, and they move faster. And so that's a current, an electric current. The more this current flows, the more it can move across the protein. Another word we can use for this is a semiconductor. An LED light in electronics, LED, stands for light emitting diode. A diode is the most basic semiconductor that exists. All of your proteins work like this. All of your proteins in your body are semiconductors, which just means that they can emit light from an electric current, or they can receive light and create an electric current. So the healing happens in the human body when you have more of this electric current, and the body redirects it and uses it to facilitate this light communication. And the more this communication happens, the more things work properly, the more things are organized properly, the more things function optimally, the way that they're supposed to naturally. Your body knows what to do with it. And you end up turning all of this current into light signals. You take these light signals and you orchestrate all the things properly. This is what heals the human body. It heals the incorrect signaling, it heals the lack of quantum mechanical processes and possibilities that create the best probabilities for the best outcomes. And it's really important to take all of this information and look at it in these different segments, because it all ties together. And so that's why I wanted to make a long video about this, because you can't just pick one or two of these topics. They don't work in isolation, they work together. And so cancer is a lack of energetic signaling, a lack of proper energetics within mitochondria in the cell. You get the incorrect signaling and a poor efficiency of mitochondria, low amount of electrons. And cancer is really hard to reverse, but if you want to prevent cancer or reverse pre-cancer or have a chance at reversing actual cancer incidence, exploring the electric current in the body is a great way to go. There are other methods that you can incorporate to potentially fight the Warburg effect that causes cancer, but yeah, I hope this is a helpful video. It's pretty complex. There's a lot of topics in here, but this is kind of an overarching explanation of how biophysics works in the human body, why natural signals are so important, and why man-made signals cause issues, why sitting indoors all day causes issues, why staring at artificial light causes issues. If the human body runs all on light, then all artificial light poses really serious problems. And if you're indoors, you're not getting natural light. If you're up at night when you should be sleeping, you're messing up the light signaling and you're not getting the morning light because you're sleeping in. There's a lot of nuance to this, so I hope this helped, and let me know if you guys have any questions down in the comments below. Also, if you really like this video, feel free to subscribe. I have a lot more content coming, and I want to help you guys succeed and feel optimal every day, so thank you.